when we say charge on, we commit to do extraordinary things. It's a catalyst for action. To put in the work. To keep trying. It's a challenge. To be smarter and stronger. Charge on. It drives us to be more. To get after it every day. It's time to rise above. To let them know we're coming. Charge on. Charge on.
Good morning. Welcome to our research colloquium. Today is our last research colloquium for this academic year, and we are very pleased to have two great scholars to discuss and to help us understand the research on aging. This topic is particularly important for us because for the research for the Rosen College, because we have a program called Senior Living Program, and the two scholars today are going to share some of their research about this particular topic with us. The two presenters are very, very well known in their field. We have Dr. Ladda Thiamwong and Dr. Jeffrey Stout. We will begin our presentation today with Dr. Ladda Thiamwong. Dr. Thiamwong focuses her research on healthy aging and fall prevention in older adults. She has recently been awarded more than 1.5 million in funding, including 2 NIH grants. Among her current projects, Dr. Thiamwong is leading an interdisciplinary team examining technology-based fall risk assessments for older adults in low-income settings. This project received a Catalyst Award from the U.S. National Academy of Medicine Healthy Longevity Global Challenge. Dr. Thiamwong is a member of the City of Orlando Mayor's Committee on Livability and Healthy Aging and the UCF Disability, Aging, and Technology Research Cluster. In 2018, she was honored by the National Hartford Center of Gerontological Nursing Excellence as a Distinguished Educator in Gerontological Nursing. I would like to welcome Dr. Thiamwong. Welcome and thank you.
Thank you so much for the opportunity to present my research. Let me open my slides. So in this presentation, I want to talk about how to assess fall risk for older adults, especially in the low-income older people. These studies receive financial support by the Life at UCF. Then we complete the pilot data, and then we submit the bigger proposal to the National Institute on Aging as RO3s. This is our team. Dr. Stout is a part of the team too. So we work together for several years. And Dr. Park from engineering and Dr. Yan from College of Science and Statisticians. So as you know that every 20 minutes, older adult dies from fall in the United States. The data from CDC and the trend of the incident fall increased. In 2014, the number of fall increased and the potential in 2020 is still more. And then the cost for cure of after they have fall and they have a fracture, like a hip fracture, the number of the money that we have to spend in that increase as well. My study focused on the person who have, we call it maladaptive fall risk appraisal. It's a discrepancy between the perceived fall risk, it means their perception about their fall risk and their physiological fall risk. It's about 1/3 of older people put in this category. And this is the first study that focused on to categorize older people who have maladaptive FORIC appraisals. And most of the time, we assess FORIC use a subjective measure. Sometimes it can be biased if older adults have a cognitive deficit or cognitive impairment. So using both subjective and objective measure can provide for FORIC assessment. This is just the general data for the older people in Central Florida. As you look at the data, it's look diverse population. We have African American, Asian, Hispanic, and non-Hispanic white. So this study focused on ethnical diverse population. And this is a publication that we have before. We collect data from 120 older people, categorized as a use a subjective and objective measure. It's look like this. This is objective measure that we use. If you can see that this is scale that the older people stand up on this scale. Under this have 4 sensors, and they close their eyes, stay still for 2 minutes, and then analyze the data about their FORIC, assess their body body sway or balance. And this is objective measure. This is subjective measure. They use a checklist and ask about their fear of falling when they have to do activity daily living. After that, we categorize this subjective measure and objective measure, and we categorize as a 4 group. We call it a FORIC appraisal metric. The group that we interest in mean here, who have original FORIC appraisal, about 16%, who have body function or have low physiological FORIC, but high perceived FORIC. In the future, if we do nothing with this group, they can have depression because they limit their physical activity. They don't want to do activity, right? It's another group. This group that we interest is about 24.5% incongruent. It means they have high physiological FORIC by the scale that we test, but they have low perceived FORIC. This group can climb up to the roof or do something that can harm, and they can fall too. Another group, in this group, most of the study focused on this group, it means have high physiological FORIC and high perceived FORIC. But the study that we focus on this original and incongruent. With our hypothesis, we want to shift this group back to the rational group and shift this group back to this group and keep them in this rational group as long as we can. So we develop metric that I just present and already I passed it. So we have 2 aims for this presentation. We focus to look at the feasibility of recruitment and acceptability of youth technology and procedures to assess older adult in low-income setting. As you know that about 30% of older people in the US live in the poverty. So there's a group that we want. And the aim too, we want to see the association between FORIC appraisal, the 4 parameters that I just present, linked to the body composition and physical activity. The sample size and power analysis, we use our pilot data that we got the grant from the life at UCF. And we use the body composition score in the compare between the person who have low physical activity and high physical activity. And we found that we have to collect at least 120 participants in order to see the association. We focus on at the Central Florida because it's possible for us to reach to this group. So this is a dark green that we focus, and we may measure in the Orange County and Seminole County. The study participant. So the inclusion criteria is we focus on age 60 years old up and have low income, use a poverty line 2019 family size, and have no cognitive impairment, and they live in their own home or in apartment or senior living. The inclusion criteria means the body composition measure that we use cannot assess the person who have like having medical implant or pacemaker. We collect data by use first in the demographic data. We use online survey of Qualtrics if they access to the internet. But if they cannot access to internet, they can answer. We're gonna give them the paper and they fill out, or we prepare the iPad in the side so they can answer the question, or we help the research participant help. We have 2 versions in English or Spanish version that the person. And this is a table that shows that what the variable that we collect, the characteristic, something like that, body composition, hand grip strength. I'm going to show the picture later on. Because of the COVID, we have to modify the setting a little bit right now, because this is the first year that we got the grant. We have to submit the progression next month. So we move a little bit to collect data at the College of Nursing. So if older people can reach out to us right now, I set a lab, research lab in my office, and then we can meet at my office. We meet 2 times. The first time they complete the survey, and then they come to the test, the B-track test. And this look like this. They do the test, close the eyes, stay still, and link to the computer. And then I can tell them that they have low risk, moderate risk, or high risk to fall. The data collect like this. I mean, in the future, after this study done, they can come back every 6 months or 1 year. They want to follow up. I want to see how good of their balance. And then I have the data in my computer at a database, and they just come to follow up themselves. This is another technology that we use. We use the body composition test. This is the thing that if they have pacemaker, they cannot do this test. We have to exclude them out. So this test takes about 1 minute. So we link that. If the participant cannot sit, they can lie down, and we can use the machine too. Over previous, we aim to, I can bring this machine because it's very light, it's only 5 pounds. I can bring that to their house and test their body composition. But after the COVID, maybe better, I can go to their house. They can standing or sitting or lie down to test this. And the result gonna be look like it. Another test, we use hand grip strength test, Dr. Stout here, and our research assistant. So this is a hand grip strength that we test. And then the sit to stand test is a simple, easy test. Sit to stand for 30 seconds and see how good of their balance. And the last thing, we want to measure physical activity. Before this, we use just self-report, but right now we try to bring some technology to measure objective physical activity. We use actigraph. So the participant gonna wear this, look like the watch. They can see the time, but they cannot see how many steps that they walk. And they have to wear this for 7 days. And then when they're done, they come back to meet us again, or we can go pick that up from them. So the potential or challenges or a solution that we have right now, because of the COVID situation, that we cannot reach out to the participant, but we have to find several strategies to reach out to them. We use a researcher or research assistant who can speak Spanish, who can recruit the participant. We try to have like a phone follow-up, or we reach out. The good thing that we use right now is we use words of mouth. We have one participant who came to the test, and they feel good with the test, and they feel okay, that's very helpful, and they can tell the wife or the friend of the wife. So for one participant right now, we have 10 participants from that 1 per 10. So I feel that is very good right now. It means they have to feel confident that what we do for them and what benefit. Right now, we have about 21 participants already. We plan to expect to finish this study next summer if we can. So in the future, we want to develop technology-based FORIC assessment to improve participation in physical activity after we know the association between flow current and physical activity and body composition, especially in the low income. And for the participant, they will be offered $30 gift cards, and they will receive the report. We print this report to them. And if in the future, if study done, but they want to follow up with us, they sign the paper that they allow us to reach out to them, or they can reach out to us. And then I think this is a long-term relationship with older participants. I try to build a database for the participant, older people around in the Central Florida, and then we can reach out and let them know what the research that we have. This is a publication that I just presented. If you want to look at more detail on that, feel free to look at that data or have any question and ask me. This is just the assessment, the FORIC assessment. But in the next study, we have not only assessment, we try to develop intervention to prevent fall. This is another publication focused on physical feedback exercise program. I don't talk much about this detail because it's the pilot data. We collect data from 40 participant intervention and control group. But I just want to show you that my focus is not only the assessment, we think about how we're gonna lay out to the intervention. So there is another publication that we have. And this another one, try to shift the idea we want to shift, we design intervention tailor based on each group and give them the tailor on based on the group that they have. And we have a peer training for do exercise for 8 weeks. And then we try to shift them from regional with the blue side, come back to this way, this way, this way. And we compare between the intervention and the control, the peer, I mean the treatment and the control. We found that the peer is have shift back. At the same time, the control, we do nothing, they have more potential to shift to the congruent group. So that this group congruent from the secondary data analysis, I use the database from national database, Medicare data. We found that the congruent group have 3 times fall than the other group. So the point is we don't want them to go to this way. So why the intervention can help. So right now, this idea we submit as a grant, a small R01 grant to prove this concept, but we don't get the money yet. So we submit 3 times already. So we want to revise and resubmit again. So for the idea that how we're gonna work for in the industry or in the hospitality, I look up about the fall incident in this area and found that the fall is a problem as well too. So if you're interested, maybe we can work about the accident fall risk management or health or safety. You can focus on the intrinsic factor, the prevent the individual person, focus on the customer or focus on the employee at the hospital, as hospitality or in the hotel, or you want to focus on extrinsic factor. I mean, like a change environment or something like that too. That is just that idea. Thank you. Anyone have any question to ask?
I have one question. Is your focus more a technical focus in the sense that you know, age is more from, you see it from a technical side, or do you see it more as a quality of life issue? How do you perceive aging?
I think aging, it starts when you were born, and every day you older, right? So I perceive aging as a prevention. So I focus on healthy aging. So the earlier that we can prevent, the better than we just have to cure. So I perceive that if I can assessment is the key for me. Assessment, if we can assess a lot of people with a simple, easy technique, but effective, and then we can categorize people who risk to fall or no risk, and we tailor based on their, that is the base for me, and then intervention can go based on that.
Mm-hmm. And my second observation is, for example, I saw that you have your cutoff point at 60 years. I have noticed that most of social arrangement like pension is going the other way. So it's going to 65, 67, 70 as, you know, where you would need that assistance or that arrangement. Is there a reason why you have 60 and not 65 or 67 or 70?
Yeah, that is a, I moved from Thailand. So in the Asian country, we categorize older people as 60. And because they work very hard, so they old faster than here. But that is not the reason why I use 60. Because if we want to prevent, sometimes 65 is too late for me to prevent them fall. They fall already, they fail several times already. So if I move further, maybe in the future, we have to 55. Then we assess them and we found that, okay, you have this factor, this balance impairment, or do you have visual impairment, blah, blah, blah. And then we just help them to treat, for example, they have visual impairment because of cataract. When they're 60 years old, then they have the surgery, and the visual impairment is the key factor to fall too. So then prevent them to fall already. or some old people that is not old yet, but they don't have physical activity much, so their balance is not like an impairment already. So I think they keep to do exercise before they go to 65 or retire. So my answer is I want to prevent, so I have to go a little bit early than 65.
And my last question is, as you know, we have a senior living program here at Rosen College. Do you have an idea about how many of these accidents happen in senior living with older people, so that we have to focus more on safety, because it seems that safety is a prevention, so is a very important aspect of your research.
Yeah, if you look at the nursing home, the fall rate in nursing home is high. I cannot say what the number is. 1/3 of older people fail, like and in 20 minutes they admit at the ER. So I think at the nursing home or senior living, if participants fail or the older resident fail, they have problem, right? It means they have to write a report, incident, something like that. But I'm not sure when we look at the real data, I don't know they report or not, but a lot of cases fall in the nursing home, because most of them, they move to nursing home. It means they cannot take care of themselves already. It means they tend to fall. Then the person who live at home, that they can most of them still healthy or can take care of themselves. They have but sometimes because in nursing home they limit activity too. They have the person who help them to do activity, and they try to prevent them to fall. Then limit activity can be the problem too. They don't want to do it because they worry that they're gonna fall. So they have overestimate their fall risk, and they limit activity, and then their muscle weakness. It's mean look like a vicious cycle. You know what I mean? So it's
okay. Thank you very much, Dr. Thiamwong, for your excellent presentation and for providing and sharing your insights about this very important topic. We will move now to our next presenter, Dr. Jeffrey Stout. He is currently a Pegasus professor and founding director for the School of Kinesiology and Physical Therapy in the College of Health Professions and Sciences at UCF. Over his 25-year career, Dr. Stout has co-authored more than 300 peer-reviewed publications, 300 national and international presentations, 8 books, 12 book chapters, and more than $3 million in funding that are focused on nutrition, exercise performance, and body composition in young and older men and women. Dr. Stout, welcome, and I defer to you.
Thank you. Let me get this started. So when I first thought I was going to give a presentation, they said, oh, from 11 to 12. Then I found out recently it was going to be in 20 minutes. So I have 20 years of information to give in 20 minutes. So it's going to be summary of a lot of stuff that we've discovered over the last 2 decades, along with a lot of other scientists from all over the world. And so what we're going to talk about today is all those negative things about losing strength, losing muscle as we get older. There is a way that we can attenuate that, or that we can reverse it. Let's see if I can move this. There we go. So aging in general, unfortunately, once we hit the age of 50, 55, we begin to start losing muscle. This happens in everybody. You know, there's not much we can do about it. If you haven't been working out, you know, and exercising prior to this, you can actually improve and increase muscle mass at that age if you have no history. If you've been doing it your entire life, the best thing that's going to happen is that you're going to slow the rate down. And so you can see that between 45 to 65 years of you know, between this age, about 70 million people, we begin the process, but then it really accelerates after the age of 65. 65, we're talking about 34 million people just within the United States that are dealing with rapid loss of muscle. So per capita, there are more seniors in Florida than any other state in the United States. So that's good for us, especially when we want to do research in this area. And again, unfortunately, we lose muscle. When we lose muscle, we lose strength. Our muscle is also a very important reservoir for our health, our immune system. And there's a recent paper that just came out showing that physical activity is directly related to the survivability of COVID. So if you're an inactive person with low muscle mass, it's not good. But if you are one that stays healthy and physically active, then your survival rate is very good. So there's something that we use as a term called sarcopenia, which describes this loss of muscle mass that is faster than what the average person would lose. And so the worldwide cost of this sarcopenia is around $1.2 billion over the next 20 years. What happens with sarcopenia is you become physically frail. And this is what Ladda was talking about in her research. When you become physically frail, you are most likely going to trip and fall. People who are classified as frail are very high risk of falling. The problem when you are physically frail and you've lost a lot of muscle is that if you have to go into the hospital, the mortality rates are not good. And so it's very important for us to get people out of this sort of range of frailty. So like I said, increased falls, it impairs mobility. There's a decline in activity of daily living and hospitalization and unfortunately death. There are a lot of factors associated with this. The biological factors is which I'm heavily involved in. There are psychosocial factors and then lifestyle. And lifestyle is your nutrition. Biological is just natural aging and how our biological systems respond to physical activity. But losing muscle is a very complex issue that seems to be attenuated or reversed by simplicity of exercise. But so we have this really complex issue of decrease in skeletal muscle quality and quantity. And so some of the things I want to point out is the reason this happens is that we become physically inactive. So our physical activity decreases. You know the old term, I don't know if you ever heard this before, but it's called you use it or you lose it. And the human body is very adaptable to its environment. And if its environment is sitting around and not being very physically active, then you lose muscle, you lose strength. So it's very important to maintain that physical activity. Sometimes that decrease in physical activity is due to a catastrophic event. It could have been due to some disease. It could have been due to falling. And that's what's so dangerous about someone who is considered frail already. They fall, they break a hip, they become even more physically inactive, and it just makes it worse. The other part is nutrition. We're going to talk about this in a minute, but protein is king when it comes to preserving muscle. And the kind of protein you eat is even more important. The other thing we lose when we lose muscle quality and quantity is strength, power, endurance. And these are all important measures when it comes to assessing frailty and disability. So I know these sounds like athletes sort of measures, and it is, but it's important for all of us to have strength and power and endurance. So the strength and the power is related to speed. It's the power that we can catch ourselves from slipping and falling. When we lose power, we can't stop that from happening and we fall. And then exercise, the contract quality, the physical activity. This actually has an impact on our nervous system. And so when we affect our nervous system, it affects the motor units within our spinal cord. So that becomes inefficient, and that also affects our skeletal muscle quality. And I know this is very complex and this represents a lot of studies, but when it comes down to fixing all of this, it's all about this, starting with that, physical activity. Okay. We've done a few studies in which we've taken a frail elderly men and women, actually, you know, from local in Orlando, put them on an exercise program. Not only did we improve the strength and power and the quality of their muscle, but we saw an improved cognitive function. There is a connection between physical activity and cognitive function. So when we look at, you know, physically elite, these are athletes, physically fit, these are young adults. Now we're getting into the 45-year-olds where we're physically independent, but we're not out, you know, climbing mountains or anything. And then we fall into this physically frail and then become physically dependent. Sorry. So these physically dependents are what we're concerned about. Even physically frail, yes, that's a concern. But we don't want to be dependent because there's some interesting research when we look at what happens. So this is a very simple graph, and these are independent elderly and these are dependent elderly. So what happens if they get some minor illness like a urinary tract infection? The independent, meaning that they have healthy muscle, they're at the normal ranges of strength and endurance. Yeah, they have a little bit of functionality that decreases, but they bounce back pretty fast and they're back to normal. Whereas someone who is dependent, they actually have this dramatic decrease even further in functionability. They're usually hospitalized, which then increases the risk of death. And then if they do recover, it takes a really long time for them to recover. So when they followed, you know, for 72 months, these people that were of a certain age, they followed them and they classified them as they had no frailty, they had some frailty, or they were very frail. And so when you follow these folks, you can see that the survival rate for the no frailty was 90%, meaning that 90% that, you know, survived. There's an 80% survival rate if you're intermediate, but if you're frail, there's only a 65%, meaning 45% of that population wasn't going to survive. So let's talk about reversing or slowing the aging process. So when we talk about healthy lifestyle, we're talking about the right nutrition and physical activity. And when you do this your entire life, so this is why I always recommend everybody should do sports, because sports forces this sort of development. You're going to be more than what the average person is. So physical activity is very important so you can really get the skeletal muscle mass as high as your genetic limit allows you. And then you try to maintain, by maintaining that exercise program, you can see that, you know, even though you are losing muscle and function as you age, that's okay, because you're not experiencing this sort of situation where you're dropping at an accelerated rate, and then there's just a certain percentage of total muscle mass relative to body weight that we can calculate, that when you go below that level, you are considered classified as disabled, you have health disorder, and this is a threshold that you don't want to cross, because this is where a lot of the issues happen. And by the way, there is a direct correlation between skeletal muscle mass and mortality. So we want to hang on to as much muscle as we can. So let's talk about some of the benefits of exercise. And I'm not going to talk about individual studies. I'm just going to give you a summary of some of the results. So some of the benefits, it has been shown to increase longevity by reducing the risk of chronic diseases. It decreases the rate of physiological changes related to aging. So those changes we see in muscle strength, mobility, you know, quality of life, those are attenuated. Maintain independence. I can't think of anything more important to older folks than maintaining their independence. The last thing they want to do is have to depend on someone else. And then improving the quality of life. We've worked with a ton of various men and women over the age of 65, as old as 94. And one of the things that they had mentioned after finishing our program was the ability, something simple like playing with their great grandkids, or being able to go grocery shopping. Those are kind of things that we take for granted, but for them, it's very important. So the benefits of just exercising 30 minutes a day, published by this guy here. And he saw that the increase in physical activity was beneficial as smoking cessation in reducing the mortality. So 30 minutes a day. It was a new longitudinal study with 5,000 men starting at the age of 45. 30 minutes a day of exercise. By age 70, they reduced the risk of dying by 40%, thus increasing longevity. Other benefits, it reduced the risk of heart disease, diabetes, and cancer. This is the professor who did it. Other benefits were, cardiovascular disease, diabetes, Alzheimer's, dementia, certain cancers, high blood pressure, obesity, and mental health, boosting the mood and improving sleep. We've noticed this in a lot of our studies as well when we put them on an exercise program. So in our unit, in the Institute of Exercise Physiology and Rehabilitation Science, we have shirts that say resistance exercise is healthcare, because there is nothing that produces results like resistance exercise. We did a study with 100 older men and women over the age of 65. The average age, I think, was like 76. And we put them on a strength training program like we would a football player. Now, granted, some of them are really weak and using broomsticks and whatever, but eventually they kept getting stronger and stronger. And it was amazing to see. And the biggest barrier to folks older than 65 wanting to do resistance exercise is they're afraid of it. They're not sure, how it will benefit. But in this particular participant from one of our studies, he was 82 years old, and after 6 months of training, he was lifting 409 kilograms. That was his max. It was incredible. And we were seeing increases like that in all of the men and women throughout this study. To be quite honest, I was surprised by their ability to get strong as well. So resistance training is king when it comes to exercise. So over 121 studies demonstrated that properly prescribed strength training will improve strength, functional capacity, activities for daily living, decrease in disability risk, and slows the decrease in muscle and bone. Two things we're very concerned about. All of these benefits have been seen with strength training, and these are not consistently seen with endurance training. And I'm not saying we don't do endurance training. What I'm saying is that strength training must be part of the exercise training or protocol. This was an interesting conclusion of one of the studies. It was a lifelong resistance training may attenuate as much as 20 years of muscle power and strength decline. So for example, if you have been training your whole life, when you're 85, you will still have the strength and power of a 65-year-old. I thought that was pretty interesting. Nutrition, really quick. It's all about protein. So protein is essential for maintaining their muscle besides resistance exercise. So in this particular study, they were looking at whether consuming RDA 0.8 grams per kilogram per day for older adults 55 to 77 was adequate at maintaining muscle mass. Clearly it was not. And what they found in this 10-year study was that 1.2 grams a day developed fewer health problems than consuming 0.8. There is a call for the RDA to change the 0.8 grams per kilogram per day dosage that has been recommending based on data that is outdated. The majority of data shows that everybody on this call needs more than the RDA just for health, let alone, if you're exercising. Now, the reason that quality of protein matters is because leucine is the key amino acid in protein that triggers the synthesis and maintenance of muscle. So we want to choose foods that are high in leucine. So for example, these foods right here have the highest percentage of leucine in them: beef, chicken, eggs, fish, milk, whey, and soy milk. And based on this, having 20 to 30 grams, and for example, 6 ounces of chicken or fish is about 30 grams of protein. So it's not like it's a lot. And when eating these meals, what the research shows is that spreading them out evenly for breakfast, lunch, and dinner, you will maximize the rate of protein synthesis, by eating like this, and this will better maintain your muscle. The problem is in America, we have not so much in the morning, maybe a little bit at breakfast, and we eat 75 grams of protein at dinner because we have a huge steak or whatever. That's not going to be as effective. In fact, it may not be helpful at all if you're only stimulating the muscle once a day. I could get into the technical part of this, but we don't have that kind of time. So the general hypothesis is that throughout adult life, consuming adequate amount of high protein at each meal in combination with exercise may, and I say will, prevent the onset, or it will slow the progression of sarcopenia, or losing muscle. So the goal is to trying to get 25 to 30 grams of protein at breakfast, lunch, and dinner. Include a high quality proteins in each meal, meaning that those proteins that include high leucine. And by the way, that's pretty much all animal-based protein, except for soy. Perform the physical activity in close proximity to each meal. So if you work out in the morning, then before breakfast, that's fine. Then at breakfast, you make sure you get in that amount of protein. So to talk about some of the potential marketing aspect, and we're talking about baby boomers now, the ones with all the money. And by the way, the baby boomers are the ones that brought the whole fitness industry back into the late 70s and early 80s. These are the people that are very interested in, or they used to be interested in, physical activity. So by 2050, it's estimated that over 2 billion people will be over the age of 60 years of age. This will account for 22% of the world's population, compared to only 10% in 2000. This demographic shift will be seen across all continents. So what's interesting about that is that it seems that the baby boomer generation is moving into its 60s, including me, and people having a huge, these are the people who have a huge impact on the wellness travel sector. So, more and more are keen on going on holidays that involve some sort of physical activity. I know when I travel, I'm always looking for the best hotel, or the hotel with the best fitness, wellness facilities or activities. That's how I choose. So one of the major effects of the number of people over the age of 60 years, as I mentioned before, these older adults will be responsible for increasing the larger share of the holiday spending in the future than all of the younger cohorts groups combined. So in 1999 alone, there was 593 million international travelers were age 60 and over. By 2050, this projection, again, will be over 2 billion trips annually. So the key is finding ways to make exercising fun, to get them to come to your facility, I think is the golden ticket. Baby boomers know how important physical activity is for their health. And I think as more and more research comes out and as we continue to educate them on the importance of physical activity, this is going to be essential. And also with assisted living facilities, what some of the best ones are doing that I've seen is they have state-of-the-art facilities implementing daily routines or programs or like exercise programs to keep seniors physically fit, mentally sharp, and independent. The more independent, the happier they are. So physical activity works together with a balanced diet that includes high quality protein at each meal. Food services in assisted living facilities are essential to residents getting the quality of protein that they need. And I'm done with 10 minutes to spare.
Thank you, Dr. Stout. I've noticed that UC has a question. UC, you can ask the question directly. Well, let me ask the question on her behalf. She is asking, she's thanking you for your presentation. And then the question is, do you see any potential for cooperating with any senior living facilities to help the residents maintain health via exercises such as strength training?
Yes. I mean, you know, there has to be an agreement. I know the new facility, the next to UCF, I forget what it's called, next door to UCF. Anyways, we were about 4 years ago when this was planned, we were going to maintain the wellness center, which included a resistance training exercise room. And I have to emphasize that. And again, I'm not saying that we don't do physical activity that involve endurance or aerobic exercise, which is also very important, but we need to get more older folks lifting. And it can be in machines, you know, more safe environment. But every person I ever talked to, even the dean of nursing, I said, we need to start get you under some weights and start lifting, because it really is amazing transformation when you do that.
Dr. Stout, I'm assuming that the fact that we will have such a large portion of the national population as defined as senior people, and that the what you have defined as a, you know, a problem, do you consider that as an individual problem in terms of losing, you know, muscle and bone, or is it more a collective problem? Why I'm asking that question is because if I understood correctly from Dr. Thiamwong, about 30% of our, you know, seniors are poor. So, I mean, so
yeah, that is a very, very good question, because it's a socioeconomic problem as well. I think there are some groups of people who do not have access to high quality protein meals, to resistance exercise training centers. And so one of the things that Ladda and I are trying to figure out is, you know, being able to get them to do something with their peers and training their peers and you know, teaching them how to do exercise, even if they're at an assisted living facility and they don't have, you know, a gym, maybe they just have a room. We teach them how to do some exercise programming there. But you're right. I mean, this is a big issue, and in my opinion, it's unfair, because we know that resistance exercise, that really high quality nutrition, can actually reverse some of these issues. So we're not sure what to do about that.
Thank you. No, it's really a very challenging problem collectively. It's because on the one hand, you know what needs to be done, but then on the other hand, not everybody has the access to the resources in order to, you know, live a life like that, and to enjoy quality of life, because that's at the end, that's it's all about. It's about quality of life.
Yes. Yeah. Somebody else.
There is another question. Oh, you see, he just wanted to say that the chat was unavailable to the general audience. I'm sorry. So, but thank you, Yuzi, for the very interesting question, and that Dr. Stout was able to respond to your question. I don't see any other question at this time, so I would like to thank you both. And I think that the insights that you provided during your presentations are very helpful to us, because it will help us think in terms of our own curriculum, of our senior living program. So what I gather from the presentations are, you know, safety, physical activity, nutrition. These are three important things. Safety on the one hand, because of the fall of our senior people, and maybe our fall is related to decrease in muscles and strength, and that has to do with nutrition and lack of activity. So it's a kind of a circle actually. And what is very interesting is that your research is trying to move away from the vicious circle to a virtuous circle, so we can, you know, allow or enable or facilitate our seniors to have a better quality of life. I thank you very much for your time and for your insights. I thank everybody for joining us during this research colloquium, and we will see you again in the next academic year. Thank you so much, and goodbye.